June 8th, 2021. We're here on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram for Ingwe's live Tuesday immigration question and answer period. We are here. We have a list of questions that clients, applicants, people like yourself have sent us through email or WhatsApp or Instagram, and we're here to answer them. Hello, Mr. Abbas. How are you? In case you have questions, the way it works is you can post your questions on the comment section, whether you're on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube, and we'd be happy to answer your questions live here today, Tuesday, 9 a.m. Eastern North America time. We will be back here 5 p.m. Eastern time, North America as well, and we're here every Tuesday. And remember, everybody, all the immigration advice we can give you today is valid for June 8th. You know how immigration works. It's like the weather. One day it's sunny, one day it's raining. So remember, any immigration information or updates we provide today is valid for today, and tomorrow it could change. So feel free to contact us through our website if there's a follow-up or you're not sure about specific questions or your specific case, because everybody's case is different. So let's jump into it. Again, if you have any questions, post them on the comment section. I will be monitoring and we will answer your questions for free, because that's what we're here for. So we have some bad news and good news. Well, the bad news is we were involved in some social media forums and we heard that somebody was refused for the TR to PR pathway, which opened on May 6th. Specifically, the applicant applied under the international student stream, the English applicants. And what this means, what is the bad news? Well, we hate it when somebody gets refused, no matter if it's somebody we don't know, because we're very pro-immigration. Obviously, we're an immigration company, right? So if somebody gets refused, no matter if they made a mistake or we know them, we don't, that's always bad news for everybody. But the good news, the other side, is that we know that the applications are being processed. These were very easy refusals. So as soon as they saw where the person was residing in Canada, example, Quebec, they were refused immediately and they received the refusal. So what does that tell you? That means processing of the new TR to PR pathway is on the way. Probably in the next 30 to 60, 70 days, everybody should be hearing back with an APR and an acknowledgement of their permanent residency application being under process, or if there's missing documents, some kind of communication. So that's the good news, bad news. Bad news is somebody was refused that we heard of. We didn't handle their file because obviously we would have never handled that file because we knew from the beginning they would have been refused. But it's always bad news when somebody fails. And again, the good news is that at least we know something. They're alive. IRCC, the Canadian government, is actually processing. Okay, so let's jump into the top 10 questions. Okay, so people have sent these to us and we've compiled them together and we're here to answer them. Feel free to post your questions anytime on the comment section. You can interrupt me and we will answer the questions. Again, everybody, we are a licensed immigration firm in Canada. So feel free to answer any questions, post any questions about studying, working, spousal, family sponsorships, visitor records, extensions, renewals, LMIAs, business immigration, or anything else. So here's some questions we're going to go through right now. It says, how can my parents become Canadian citizens? That's a common question, right? This is our top 10 questions. Well, if you're a Canadian permanent resident or citizen, you have the opportunity to participate in an annual lottery. So the Canadian government has a lottery system where people register, Canadian citizens or PR, and if you meet the eligibility criteria, you can sponsor your parents to become Canadian PRs if your parents are overseas, for example. So it's a lottery system, and there's an eligibility based on your income. If you're an international student or worker, or you don't have your PR yet, you cannot sponsor your parents, and you need 3 years income history to be able to sponsor your parents, and it has to meet the minimum threshold. Okay, so that's important to know. Okay, so how many days do I have to apply for postgraduate work permit? 180 days or 90 days? Okay, well, those are two different things. 180 and 90, they're both yes and no. You have 90 days from the time that you graduate or your study permit expires, okay? Basically 90 days from the date you graduate, or if your study permit expires before 90 days, to apply for your postgraduate work permit. It doesn't mean you're allowed to work after graduation. It means that you have either 90 days if your study permit has not expired, or if it expires before the 90 days, that expired date, you have time to apply for a postgraduate work permit. However, if you're outside of Canada or inside, and you had a valid study permit within 180 days, and you graduated successfully and you met the eligibility criteria, you can be eligible to apply for a postgraduate work permit. So it depends on your case, right? So typically everybody would like to apply for their postgraduate work permit immediately when they have a graduation confirmation, but you have up to 180 days, even if you're outside of Canada, to apply. Okay, so it depends on your specific case. I know it's a bit confusing, but they're both right. 180 days and 90 days, but they're applicable to different scenarios. So another top question we have is how many points I must have to be selected now? What are in express entry? What are the requirements of 380 points? What do you mean? Okay, well, express entry is a skilled immigration stream which the Canadian government has copied from Australia many years ago. The system works like this. It gives your profile points based on your age, education, language ability, and work experience. More work experience is given to people with Canadian work experience instead of foreign work experience, and ties to Canada, family, studies completed here. Okay, so the people who were selected recently with 380 points in express entry had Canadian work experience. So that's a major eligibility criteria for the Canadian express entry, Canadian experience class. Okay, so if you're outside of Canada and you don't have Canadian work experience this year, express entry is not for you. However, you can have your active profile online in express entry, which will be valid 1 year, and you can renew it and create a new one after 1 year. There are specific eligibility criteria to have a valid profile in express entry. Feel free to contact us if you need more information, or just Google it. It's pretty easy. What happens if I travel after my PR application? Okay, let's say this is a very common question. You've applied for your PR and you're waiting for your PR inside of Canada. However, there's a family emergency, or you need to travel back home, or for whatever other reason. If you're in the new TR to PR pathway, you have to stay in the country while your PR is under process. So you're not allowed to travel out. If you are in express entry, you're allowed to travel and come back. However, remember, if you don't work, you need to provide settlement funds. If you're outside of Canada, you have no restrictions if you were invited for your PR. If you're inside of Canada, check if you're doing spousal sponsorship PR, express entry, Canadian experience class, TR to PR pathway, provincial nominee program, or business immigration. Each case is different, so you have to know your scenario and be careful that not in every case you're allowed to travel while your PR is being processed when you're inside of Canada. Here's another very Very common question. I think this is like the top most asked question. Which province is more immigrant friendly in Canada? Provinces are like states. We have 10 provinces in Canada and 3 territories. Which one is the most immigrant friendly? I would say the top immigrant friendly provinces are Atlantic immigration, which means Prince Edward Island, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and Newfoundland. And then also Saskatchewan. These would be the top provinces that are immigrant friendly. And if I had to reduce that to even the top 2, or let's say top 3, I would say Saskatchewan, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, if I had to give you the top 3. Okay. Here's another question. It could be a variant of this question. If you have $20,000, or I think they mean if I have $20,000, can I study in Canada with my boyfriend? Do we need to get married before we come to Canada? You don't need to get married. If you've been living together at least 1 year continuously with your boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, your partner, you can apply under common law and you can come together to Canada potentially based on your profile, based on your nationality. The visas are different. But no, you don't have to be married if you're coming together with your partner. If you have been living together, if you have not been living together or cannot provide proof, then you will not be considered a couple. So you'd have to come separately. And yes, if you get married, that makes life easier. However, you don't have to get married. There's other options. We have some questions here on Instagram, so I'm going to go through them. And then we'll continue on our top 10 list, folks. Top 10 immigration questions. So Vinura is asking, is work experience in a NOC-B job while studying valid for the CEC application? No. So that means if this is the first time you're studying and this is your work experience while you're studying, then it does not count for express entry. If you had previously worked with a work permit, let's say, then that could have counted. But if you're studying and your only Canadian work experience is based on your part-time or full-time work while you have a study permit, that will not count towards eligible express entry Canadian work experience. Okay, so I hope I've answered that question clearly. MH Nico is asking a question on Instagram. Hi, 10 months ago, my mother did biometric in Istanbul for tourist visa by my sister invitation, but there is no news about her visa. Okay, so if it's just a regular visitor visa, Nico, I think that's normal. We've had cases where it took 6 months or more for somebody's wife or husband to obtain a visitor visa to come, okay? Because visitor visas right now have the least priority, okay, by the embassy. So you're probably processing the visa in the Ankara embassy, right? The Canadian embassy in Ankara. What you have to do is send a web form or send a direct communication to the Ankara embassy, wait for a reply within 4 to 6 weeks that what has happened to her visa, right? Because right now, if you look during COVID, processing times were close to 9 to 10 to 12 months. However, that should have been improved. They should have already responded to you. So please send a IRCC, Canadian Immigration Department web form to them or email them directly. Their email is on the Canadian government website, and mention the file number and mention that, hey, we're waiting for an update. So they need to give you a response. But it's been 10 months, so definitely you need to follow up. Now the processing times are better, but if you applied during COVID, yes, everything was stuck. I believe you, and we've experienced it as well. No problem, Binura. So we're gonna go back to our top 10 questions, folks. Feel free to post your questions here on the comment section, and I will look at them and answer them. So here's another question, one of our top 10 questions. Why 1-year college or 2-year certificate is not eligible for Ontario Provincial Program? Is it fair? Change the rules without a transition period? What the college's opinion? Okay, so what they mean is that if you're a student and you've studied and you're trying to apply under the Ontario Provincial Nominee Program, okay, this means that if you did a 1-year degree, okay, in college, not a master's, a 1-year college degree or a 2-year certificate, potentially you will not be eligible for the Ontario Provincial Nominee Program. Okay, why is that? Because they have restrictions on 1-year program. So if it's a 1-year program, it has to be, the admission requirements have to be very specific to that 1-year program to be eligible. If it's a 2-year certificate, again, very specific criteria for the admission criteria for that program. And yes, it's not fair. However, the Ontario province or the government has been planning this change for the last 4 or 5 months, right? At least. So if you were not aware of that, then that's a problem. And if you were studying while you were doing that, I would have said probably you could have just switched your program. Yes, it's unfair because you've spent all that money so far. However, it's out of the control of anybody, and the Ontario government is deciding on their immigration criteria, right? Hello, Tintron. How are you? Okay, some other top questions. If my husband or wife has a severe medical issue, will my family be rejected for a PR or a visa? No, not necessarily for a visa unless the country you're applying from requires a medical exam. Not every country requires it. For a PR, potentially yes. If there's an overburden on the Canadian public healthcare system, if there's a public risk for public safety based on that medical condition, the PR will be refused for the whole family. There are exceptions, there are ways around it, but it really depends on your medical condition. Okay? On visas, though, it's less likely. Study permits, work permits, or visitor visas. Here's another very common question in our top 10 Canadian immigration questions. If my ex-husband or ex-wife is not in Canada, can I apply to PR, like permanent residency, without his permission? Well, you can apply if you're eligible under a program for yourself. But if you have a child with your ex-partner, let's say, and they are not in Canada or they're overseas, and you want to apply for a PR, you need your ex's permission. It has to be a written legal custody permission or authorization for the other parent, okay, even if you're not married, for the other parent to give you permission to have the child come to Canada and apply for the permanent residency. You cannot mention that, hey, the other parent is overseas, I'm here, we've divorced, this is my child now. No, you need authorization or custody documents. One of the two. It's all legal documents. It's a very sensitive subject, so don't take it lightly. Okay? Let's see, are there any other top 10 questions? Let's see, $20,000 if I was not Canada. May I buy a house? May I buy a house as a 1-year work permit? Of course, you can buy a house even if you don't have a work permit in Canada. Ontario and BC have specific non-resident taxes. However, you can get a refund or an exemption. If you're applying for your PR, you can get a rebate. If you have questions about that, contact us. We do have a property advisory team. Many of our clients do purchase properties, and we advise them how to make sure they get their extra taxes back from the government. Or do I go on so many? Why does Canada want so many immigrants? Okay, this is another question. And if it wasn't, you should ask that, because there's a population growth issue in Canada. The population is aging. There's not enough growth. And if we don't bring in a specific number of new immigrants every year, the pension system, the CPP, the Canadian Pension Plan, will have problems. The economic growth will have problems. The labor force will have problems. The country will have problems. We're the second largest, I believe, country in the world, and our population is 1/10 of most other countries of similar size or even smaller. So that's a very simple way to answer that question as well. So that's our top 10, but that was almost 11 questions that we answered today. I hope that's given some clarity, and feel free to post your questions, whether email or social media, because we will be back here today at 5 p.m. to answer more questions live. Okay, so whether you're inside or outside of Canada, you're worried about your family sponsorship, you're worried about a visitor visa, admission to a school, applying for your PR, nomination certificate, a labor market impact assessment, LMIA, or the Atlantic Immigration Program, or anything else related to studying, working, PRs, or sponsorship, we'd be happy to answer the questions live here every Tuesday, 9 a.m., 5 p.m. And MH Niku is asking, thanks a lot. Did you think my mother will be rejected or accepted? She applied with my sister invitation. There should not be a reason, because most parents do get approved unless there's an issue, right? So if you're not Canadians, that could be one issue. If there was misrepresentation, that could be one issue, right? But typically parents do get approved. Okay, it's not 100%, but 95% of cases that we've handled or I've seen, okay, you mentioned your sister has a PR, are approved. Okay, so don't worry about that. Hopefully it will be approved. Parents are a priority with visitor visas. Let's see. Let's look at some other questions and then we will try to wrap up. I'm not good at this stuff. My screen is very small on the mobile, and we are going through. Thanks a lot. Yeah, my sister has a PR. Okay, we have one more question. Miguel Hernandez. How long before my work permit expires I have to apply for a visitor record while I wait for my TR to PR? Answer. Okay, if your work permit expires and there is no program that you're eligible for to apply for a renewal, yes, you should apply for a visitor record before the expiry. Okay, so if you let it expire, you have to restore your status and apply for visitor record together, which is more expensive, more costly, and longer processing time. So before your work permit expires, hopefully you will have an acknowledgement of your PR, because I'm not sure when your work permit is expired, but you have to apply for a visitor record to convert yourself to a visitor before the expiry date. It's very important. Okay, make sure you show some funds and assets or financial, just to make sure they understand that you don't necessarily have to work. And you can stay as a visitor, but hopefully you will have an acknowledgement of your PR, and there will be an option for you to sort of convert, or maybe there's another program that you could be eligible under to renew your work permit. However, make sure you have to apply for the visitor record before the expiry of your work permit if you're inside of Canada. Annie Walker is asking a question on our Instagram. If I study a certificate in architecture that lasts 1 year and then apply to the post-graduation visa, which means the work permit, can I apply for the residency after finishing the postgraduate visa? Okay, Annie, this depends on the province your program, right? If it's just a certificate, probably not. You cannot just apply for your PR. If you do a master's program, potentially there's 3 provinces which accept master's programs direct to PR. But if you're just doing a certificate in a university or college, you will not have a direct path to PR, but you will be able to get a work permit if your college or university is approved by the Canadian government. There's a website. It tells you if it's a public college or university, they're all approved. If it's private, certain programs are approved. Then you have to gain work experience or have a job offer to be eligible for specific immigration programs inside of Canada to apply for your PR. So it's not a direct path. So if you're asking whether that certificate will give you a direct PR, no. Will it give you a work permit depending on the program or school? Yes. Do you have the opportunity to become eligible for an immigration program to lead to your PR? Potentially, but that depends on you, on your work experience inside of Canada, or an employer who will sponsor you. Because you have options with express entry, you have options with provincial nominee programs in every province. We have 10 provinces and 3 territories. And you have the rural regional programs, the Ontario rural regional, the federal rural programs, and the Atlantic immigration programs. So it really depends where you're studying, which region and province, and what is the program that you're planning to apply under. But no, the certificate from college or university will not give you a direct PR, but you can potentially apply for a work permit depending on your school and program. Okay, that was a very long answer, but I just wanted to make sure we are very clear. So we have one more question here on Facebook. Julianne Nunes is asking, do you know the total applicants submitted under the healthcare workers? Sure, we'll find that out. No problem, Julie. We're always happy to give everybody an update on the TR to PR pathway. So right now, for the healthcare workers inside of Canada, 20,000 applicants are accepted until November 5th. 1,770 have been filled. So there's over 18,000 spots left for healthcare. If you're in a non-healthcare essential worker occupation, 30,000 applicants for English. What we're talking about is English applicants. So that means you have IELTS or CELPIP are open. 12,559 spots have been taken for the non-healthcare essential occupation. So that means there's 17,441, I hope my math is correct, spots left, okay? So there's a lot of spots left, but make sure you're quick in getting your documents ready. The international student stream for English applicants closed. For the French-speaking applicants, every stream of the new TR to PR pathway is open, okay? So I hope that's answered everybody's question. We're back here at 5 p.m. today, Eastern time, North America. So that's like Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa, New York, Florida, same time zone, to answer any immigration-related questions. And if you have any follow-up issues, feel free to message us on Instagram and Facebook or on our YouTube, or just go directly to our website. We'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We will be back again later today. Take care and